never thought I'd end up in a situation like this, but here I am trying to piece it all together. My name's Dave, and I was married to Lisa for about 5 years before I found out she'd been cheating on me. We met in college, had a pretty decent relationship, at least that's what I thought, and then we got married right after she finished her master in cybersecurity. She always told me she was so busy with work, but I never really suspected anything until the signs started creeping in. At first, it was small stuff. She'd be texting late at night, claiming she was working on some project or another. Her phone was always glued to her hand, more than usual, and she'd get defensive if I tried to glance at it. I'd catch her deleting messages or hiding her notifications. Honestly, I thought maybe she was just stressed or overworked. She was deep into her career, working with some pretty sensitive government contracts. I figured it was just her being secretive about work stuff, which I understood but also found a little odd. Then, things started to change. She became more distant emotionally, snapping at me over little things, and I could feel her pulling away. I remember asking her if something was going on, and she told me I was imagining things, that she was just tired or stressed. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting. But I was starting to notice her phone always had new passwords, and she'd get weird when I asked to see her messages. Still, I didn't have concrete proof, so I kept quiet, trying to give her space. One night, I was working late at my own job, cybersecurity for a government agency, and I decided to check the logs on our network, something I sometimes did for fun, just to keep my skills sharp. I noticed something strange. A lot of files had been accessed from her laptop that I didn't remember her mentioning. Files related to classified info, data streams that shouldn't have been touched. I dug deeper and found that her device had connected to some dark web channels, and even worse, there were signs that some of our national security data had been leaked or sold. I couldn't believe it at first. My wife, the woman I trusted, was involved in something so dangerous. I knew I had to find out more, so I started connecting the dots. That's when I found out she had been talking to someone who turned out to be her coworker and cybersecurity partner, Mark. She'd always been flirtatious with him, but I never thought she'd cross that line. I mean, I wasn't blind. I saw her flirt a little, but I thought it was just her personality. Turns out she was sharing everything with him. Stories, secrets, even about our marriage, our kids, everything. And it wasn't just casual flirting. It was sex talk, detailed, explicit, and frequent. They'd meet up after work, sometimes at hotels, sometimes at her place. I found out because I hacked her email, something I hate to admit I did, but I was desperate for answers, and I found the messages, the plans, the photos. She'd been lying to my face every single day. When I confronted her about it, her reaction was classic Lisa, defensive, bitchy, full of lies. She told me I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her, that Mark was just a coworker helping her with some project. She said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things because I was insecure. She told me it was all just a stupid mistake, that she loved me, but that Mark was just some guy she was venting to. Yeah, right. Venting about what? Our marriage, our life. It felt like she was pulling a script out of a bad soap opera, acting innocent and betrayed at the same time. I couldn't believe how smooth she was, how she tried to turn it around on me. The emotional punch hit hard. I felt a mixture of shock, rage, and heartbreak all at once. My whole world, the person I trusted most, was lying and screwing around with someone I worked with, someone with access to sensitive info that could have ruined everything. I mean, she's supposed to be the smartest person I know, and she's out there playing games, risking national security just to get her rocks off. That realization made me sick, thinking about how close I was to losing everything, not just my marriage but my job, my country. I spent the next few days numb, replaying everything over and over. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about the fact that she'd been so reckless, so stupid. I kept asking myself, how did I not see it? How did I miss all the signs? Every time I looked at her, I saw this bitchy woman who thought she was untouchable, lying, cheating, and playing on the dark web with my partner in crime. I wanted to scream, to yell, to do something destructive, but I knew I had to keep my head. I had to think, plan. Because if she'd been lying about this, what else was she capable of? I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a betrayal of everything I believed in. After that initial shock wore off, I knew I had to act fast. My mind was racing, trying to figure out the next move. I couldn't just storm in and confront her without any proof, not when she was so good at spinning lies. So I kept digging into her devices, her accounts, her work emails. I wanted to understand how deep this really went, and to gather enough evidence to make her squirm. Honestly, I'd never been someone into hacking or spying, at least not like this, but I was desperate. I had to know exactly what she was up to, how far she'd gone, and what kind of danger she might have put us in. I spent a whole night going through her laptop and phone, pulling logs, reading messages, taking screenshots. She was incredibly careless sometimes, leaving her devices unlocked, using her work computer for personal stuff, even writing some of their dirty exchanges in plain sight. I still can't believe she was that stupid. But I guess arrogance makes people careless. She thought she was untouchable, that she could cheat on me and nothing would happen. Not anymore. I was already furious, but I also felt this sinking sadness, realizing I'd lost someone I used to believe was my partner in everything. What really pushed me over the edge was discovering just how much danger she'd put us in. Her access to classified info, her conversations with Mark, the data she was leaking, these weren't small things. They could have triggered an international incident, or worse. I was thinking about the national security implications, how she'd risked everything for a quick fuck. She had no respect for the work I did, for the trust I placed in her, or for the safety of our country. That realization made my blood boil. It wasn't just infidelity anymore, it was treason from my wife. That's what made it so hard to process. I remember sitting there in the dark, staring at her phone, the evidence laid out before me. I felt this strange mixture of betrayal, anger, and fear. I wanted to explode, to confront her right then and there, but I knew I had to stay calm, at least until I had all the facts. I needed a plan. I started drafting what I was going to say, how I was going to catch her in her lies. But I also knew I couldn't just expose her outright. I needed leverage, proof she couldn't deny. So I set up a little trap. I kept her devices monitored, waited for her to slip up, and kept recording everything she did. In the meantime, I reached out to a close friend of mine, someone I trusted who worked in counterintelligence, just to get some perspective. I didn't tell him everything, but enough to understand what kind of mess I was really in. He told me that, with the evidence I had, I could take her down legally, or I could use it as leverage to get her to come clean. Either way, I realized I had to confront her directly, but prepared for her to lie her way out of it again. I was already imagining the scene, her bitchy attitude, her lies, her fake tears, and her dismissive attitude like she'd done this 100 times before. The most chilling part was knowing that my wife, Lisa, had always been manipulative. She could spin the truth like a professional liar. She was good at hiding her true feelings, charming, bitchy, often dismissive, and I'd fallen for her act for so long. The way she'd looked at me when I accused her, that smirk she had when denying everything, it was like she was enjoying the power, the control. She thought she could get away with anything. I realized I was going to have to be ruthless if I wanted to get her to admit what she'd done or to make her pay for it. The day of confrontation came faster than I expected. I finally gathered enough evidence to back up my suspicions. I decided I'd confront her at home, where I could control the environment. I wanted her to face everything face to face, no more hiding behind screens or excuses. I didn't want her to think she could spin her way out of this. I wanted her to know that I knew the truth, that I had the proof. All I had to do was wait for her to come back from work, and I was ready. I'd prepared my speech, my questions, my accusations. I knew that once I saw her reaction, I'd know exactly where this was going. When she got home, she was her usual bitchy self, snarky, dismissive, acting like she didn't have a care in the world. I could see the flicker of defiance in her eyes. I didn't waste any time. I pulled out my phone, played the recordings, showed her the messages, the access logs, everything. Her face changed instantly. That smug expression she constantly wore crumbled into something else, panic, anger, and outright denial. She started lying again, parroting the same tired excuses. "It's just sex," she said. "It doesn't mean anything." Or that Mark was just helping her with work and that I was crazy to think she'd do something like that. It was all so predictable, but this time I wasn't buying it. I had the evidence and I could see her desperation. Her reaction was classic Lisa. She yelled, called me controlling, paranoid, a jealous husband who didn't understand her. She said I was just overreacting, that I was blowing things out of proportion. She even accused me of spying on her because I didn't trust her, like she always did when she got caught. But I wasn't falling for her bullshit anymore. I felt this cold, burning rage, the kind that takes over your body when you realize you've been played for a fool. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do next, but I knew this betrayal was going to change everything. The confrontation didn't go the way she probably expected. Lisa's bitchiness turned into outright anger, then into tears, fake tears. I was sure of it, trying to spin everything around on me. She kept insisting it was just sex, that she and Mark were only messing around for fun, that it didn't mean anything, and that I was crazy to think she'd risk everything for some stupid affair. She called me insecure, controlling, and accused me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. Honestly, I wanted to punch her in the face, but I kept my cool. I needed to see how far she'd go, how she'd keep lying. The thing is, I knew her too well. I'd seen her manipulate people, twist the truth, and keep her own secrets hidden. I could see the way her eyes flickered, the way her voice cracked when she tried to deny everything. The evidence was irrefutable. I played the recordings again, showed her the access logs, the messages, everything she'd thought she could hide. Her face turned pale, then red with rage. Then that bitchy smirk came back like she was trying to control the situation. It was like she was enjoying her little game, even now, just trying to stay one step ahead of me. I remember feeling this strange mixture of disgust and heartbreak. I'd loved her once, believed in our marriage, in her intelligence, in her loyalty. Now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd risked everything for a quick thrill. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? Wasn't I enough? But really, it wasn't about me. It was her. She chose to cheat, to lie, to hide her affair with Mark, knowing full well what the stakes were. And the worst part was knowing she'd lied right to my face for months, all while she was screwing around with someone who had access to our most sensitive information. I felt this sudden surge of rage, a desire to punish her, to make her hurt the way she'd hurt me. That's when I realized I couldn't just walk away quietly. No, I had to do something that would make her regret what she'd done, that would make her see the damage she'd caused. I decided I'd keep the evidence, but I'd also start planning my revenge. Not just emotional, but strategic. If she thought she could betray me and get away with it, I'd show her she was dead wrong. Over the next few days, I kept quiet while I collected my thoughts. I knew her personality well enough. She was stubborn, a liar, and she loved to manipulate. So I had to be clever. I started by reaching out to some contacts I knew in cybersecurity, people who understood how dangerous her actions really were. I wanted to see what kind of damage she'd done, how far her leaks had gone. It turned out that some of the data she accessed was sold on the dark web, and I had the means to trace it back. I also found out that she'd been secretly communicating with Mark on encrypted channels, planning trips, exchanging explicit sex chats, and even discussing how to cover her tracks. It was clear Lisa was good at hiding things. She'd been lying constantly, pretending everything was fine. She'd always been bitchy, dismissive, and full of excuses, but I could see her cracks now. That false bravado she had was crumbling. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been so blind, so naive to trust her completely. Now I knew her true nature. She was a liar and a cheat, and she'd almost compromised our national security because of her selfishness. That realization made me feel sick, but also energized. She made her choice, and I was going to make her pay. I started to put together a plan, not just to leave her, but to make her suffer in a way that she'd never forget. I knew she'd try to spin her way out of it, too. Manipulate her way back into my good graces, but I wasn't going to fall for that. She'd lied so much, I didn't trust her anymore. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I was done with the lies, done with her bullshit. That's when I decided I'd tell her the truth about how much I knew, how far I'd gone to uncover her secrets. I wanted her to understand that I was not just some naive husband anymore. I was someone who knew her darkness, her manipulations, her lies. So I waited. I waited for the perfect moment to drop the bomb. I wanted her to feel the panic, the fear, the realization that she was finally cornered. I wanted her to know that her game was over. I kept checking her phone, her email, her chat channels, anything to catch her off guard. And sure enough, one night she slipped. She forgot to log out of her encrypted messaging app. I saw her typing, saw the message pop up. An explicit sex talk with Mark, plans to meet at a hotel, discussing how to cover their tracks. That was the moment I knew I had everything I needed. I replayed that message over and over, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. When I finally confronted her again, I laid out everything I'd found. The exchange about their secret meetings, the sex, the data leaks, the dark web dealings, all of it. Her face twisted, furious and helpless all at once. She was trying to lie, to deny, but I had her dead to rights. I told her I knew about the affair, about the leaks, about how stupid she'd been. I told her she'd risked everything, our marriage, my career, our safety, and she looked at me with that bitchy, defiant look she always had when she thought she was in control. But this time, I wasn't backing down. I was done playing nice. She could lie all she wanted, but the truth was out, and I was ready to make her regret it. The next step was clear in my mind. I wasn't going to let her brush this off with her usual smirk and lies. I needed her to understand the full weight of what she'd done, and I knew exactly how to make sure she felt it. I decided I'd keep her on edge, let her think. She still had some control while I quietly set everything into motion. I stayed calm, methodical. I needed her to see that I had the upper hand now and that she was powerless to stop what was coming. I started by contacting some trusted contacts in cybersecurity, people who knew how to trace dark web transactions, how to hack her encrypted channels, and how to monitor her digital footprint without her catching on. I wanted to be precise, silent, and thorough. If she thought she was smart enough to hide her tracks, I was going to prove her wrong. I also kept a close eye on her movements, her phone, her emails, anything that could give me even a hint of her next move. I didn't want her to suspect I was onto her, so I played it cool, pretending everything was business as usual. Meanwhile, Lisa was trying her usual tactics, acting innocent, calling me paranoid, accusing me of overreacting. She kept insisting she loved me and that Mark meant nothing, just some stupid work buddy she'd been venting to. She was bitchy, dismissive, and so full of lies I almost felt sorry for her. But I knew better now. I knew she'd been lying about everything, hiding her true self behind that bitchy facade. She thought she could keep manipulating her way out of this mess, but I had all the ammunition I needed. One night I caught her talking again, only this time she was on her phone, whispering into her encrypted app. I saw her typing, saw the message pop up. It was a plan to meet Mark at some hotel downtown, to celebrate their little secret affair, and to figure out how to cover her tracks. I recorded it, took screenshots, and stored everything securely. I felt this strange rush, part anger, part satisfaction, knowing I finally had her cornered. That was the moment I knew I'd make her pay. Not just emotionally, but in a way she'd never forget. I decided I'd let her keep her little act for a few more days, just enough to let her believe she was still in control. Meanwhile, I was preparing my final move. I wanted her to feel the panic, the fear, and the regret. I wanted her to understand that her choices had consequences, that I was done being the naive husband. I knew her personality well enough, her bitchy attitude, her manipulations, and I was ready to expose her in a way that would shatter her facade. When the night came to execute my plan, I made sure everything was in place. My phone, her devices, the recordings, all ready to go. I'd already contacted a couple of my cybersecurity contacts to help me take things to the next level. I wanted her to know I wasn't just angry, I was dangerous. I aimed to corner her with irrefutable evidence, and then I'd confront her again face to face with all her lies laid bare. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I was finally done playing her game. So I waited for her to come home, knowing that when she did, she would face everything. I was ready. I had the evidence, the plan, and most importantly, the resolve. The woman I married, the woman I loved, she was gone now. In her place was someone selfish, reckless, and manipulative. And I was about to make sure she understood just how much she'd screwed up, not just in her marriage, but in her life, and possibly her career. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it yet, but I knew that once I did, everything would change, and she'd never be able to lie her way out of it again. The moment she walked through the door was almost anticlimactic, but I knew better than to let my guard down. She was her usual bitchy self, throwing her "I don't know what you're talking about" attitude at me, but I could see the flicker of nervousness in her eyes. That smirk she always wore was replaced with a tight, forced expression. I had everything ready: the recordings, the logs, the screenshots. I decided to play it slow, let her sweat a little more, just to see how far she'd go to deny what I already knew. I sat her down in the living room calmly, but with a cold edge in my voice that made it clear I wasn't messing around anymore. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and then started laying everything out in detail. I told her I knew about her affair with Mark, about their secret meetings, about the dark web data leaks, and about how reckless she'd been with classified information. Her bitchy attitude instantly shifted. Her jaw clenched, and she started to spin her usual lies about how it was all just a misunderstanding, how Mark was just a work friend, and she didn't mean for any of this to happen. But I didn't let her get away with it. I showed her the screenshots of her explicit sex chat with Mark, the messages about meeting at that hotel, the plans they'd made. I played the recordings of her whispering into her encrypted app, the one where she was talking about how she was going to see him, how she was going to enjoy it. Her face went pale, then red again. She tried to act angry, defiant, like she was still in control, but I could see her trembling. She knew she was caught. I reminded her that I had the logs showing her access to sensitive data, the dark web transactions, the evidence that could have shut down her entire career if it got out. She kept trying to play the victim, accusing me of spying, of being paranoid, of ruining her life. But I wasn't having it. This wasn't about her feelings anymore. It was about her reckless betrayal, her risking national security to have sex behind my back. That's when she threw a tantrum, yelling that it was all just sex, that I was overreacting, that I was making a huge deal out of nothing. I stayed calm and told her that nothing she said could change what I already knew, that she'd made her choices and now she had to face the consequences. I saw her bitchy facade crack a little. Her eyes darted around, searching for a way out, but she knew she was backed into a corner. I told her I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this, that she'd been caught red-handed and her lies didn't matter anymore. I told her she'd put everything, our marriage, my career, our safety, in jeopardy, and she was going to face the fallout. I let her see the recordings, the evidence, the logs, hoping that it sunk in how deep she'd gone and how badly she'd screwed up. Her reaction was a mixture of fury and helplessness. She screamed at me, called me controlling, insecure, a jealous husband, words she'd used so many times before when I called her out. But this time her voice cracked. Her bitchy attitude was gone, replaced by a look of pure panic. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was just sex, that Mark was just a stupid mistake. But I didn't believe her anymore. I saw through her lies. I saw the real her, the manipulative, selfish woman who didn't care about anyone but herself. I told her I was done. Done with her lies, her manipulations, her reckless risk-taking. I said I needed some time to think, that I wasn't going to make any decisions right now, but she should understand that her actions had consequences. I told her she'd lost my trust, forever, and that she needed to figure out if she really wanted to fix this mess or walk away. I could see her trying to hold it together, but her bitchy mask was cracking. I also warned her that I was going to do everything in my power to make sure she paid for her betrayal, legally, emotionally, and maybe in ways she wouldn't like. That night, as she stormed out of the room, I felt the weight of everything. The anger, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it all hit me like a truck. I knew I wouldn't forget this easily, that I'd carry the scars of her infidelity and reckless behavior for a long time. But I also knew one thing: I was done being the naive husband. I was done trusting her, and I was finally ready to take back control of my life. She had pushed me to the edge, and I was prepared to push back harder, in ways she'd never see coming. The game was over. Now all that was left was to decide what the next chapter of my life would look like. The days that followed were a blur of cold calculations and quiet heartbreak. I kept everything under control, refusing to let her see how much her betrayal had shattered me. I knew I needed to keep her on her toes, so I played the part of the calm, rational husband, at least outwardly. Behind the scenes, I was poring over every piece of evidence, planning how to cut her loose in a way that left her no room to manipulate or spin her way out. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done, not just to me, but to everything we'd built together. I contacted the appropriate authorities and my cybersecurity contacts to ensure that the leak of classified information was contained. I made sure her access was revoked, her devices traced, and her digital footprint wiped clean from the dark web. I wanted her to realize that her reckless actions had consequences beyond just her lying and cheating. I wanted her to understand that she had risked national security, and I made damn sure she paid for it, legally and professionally. All the while, I kept my emotions in check, knowing that losing control now would give her the upper hand. The final confrontation was inevitable. I sat her down one last time, this time with no more lies, no more manipulations. I told her that I was done, that I'd taken steps to ensure she couldn't hurt us anymore. I told her I knew about everything, her affair, the leaks, the dark web dealings, and that she'd burned her bridges with me. Her bitchy attitude was gone now, replaced with a defeated silence. She tried to argue, to cry, to beg, but I had already made my decision. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. I couldn't trust her, and I wouldn't stay with someone who jeopardized everything we had. As she packed her bags and left, I felt a strange mixture of relief and pain. It was like finally ripping off a bandage that had been bleeding for too long. I knew she'd try to come back, to manipulate her way into my life again, but I was done. I had learned that trust, once broken so badly, is almost impossible to repair. What I'd gone through taught me a harsh lesson. Some betrayals cut so deep that they leave scars you carry forever. And in her case, she'd left more scars than I thought I could handle. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown from this. I've become more cautious, more aware of the people around me. I learned not to ignore the red flags, no matter how much I wanted to believe in the good in someone, because sometimes that good is just a mask hiding something dark. I also learned that revenge isn't about revenge anymore. It's about protecting yourself and knowing when to walk away. I don't wish her ill. She's made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. But I refuse to be her victim anymore. This whole experience has been a brutal wake-up call. I've had to confront the ugly truths about trust, loyalty, and what really matters in life. I'm not perfect, far from it, and I still carry the hurt. But I also carry the knowledge that I'm stronger than I thought and that I can survive betrayal no matter how deep. I hope that sharing this story might help someone else see the warning signs before it's too late. Because once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. But you can choose to walk away and start over. That's what I'm doing now. Starting fresh, moving forward, and never letting anyone threaten my peace again.